welcome to Joy News, your election headquarters. You're live on Joy 99.7 FM on radio, also online, myjoyonline.com, and on the Joy News channel on Multi TV. Now, on Saturday and Sunday, thousands of Ghanaians went to the polls in a mock exercise to test the efficiency of the biometric voter registration system, while the various political parties have raised serious concerns with the conduct of the weekend's voting. But the Electoral Commission is sounding very, very happy with the way the exercise went. This afternoon on your election headquarters, we'll do a post-mortem of the mock voting and bring both the EC and the political parties together to explore and address all the concerns. We are live from the Multi TV studios and also live on Joy 99.7 FM. You're live on Joy 99.7 FM and also on the Joy News channel on Multi TV. We're also live on myjoyonline.com. Election headquarters is also streaming live on Love 99.5 FM in Kumasi. It's brought to you by Infobox Mobile Services. Text election to 1922 as well as Star Ghana. My name is Araba Kumson. Now, across the country on Saturday and Sunday, polling stations were open from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. for voting, organized by the Electoral Commission. It was a massive pilot project to test the efficiency of the biometric voter verification system. The EC wanted to know what challenges they might face come December 7 and know how to deal with it. But 24 hours after the mock exercise, the political parties are raising some very serious concerns. Last week, the NDC was emphatic it knew nothing about the exercise. Today, the MPP, the CPP, and the PNC have all questioned the process. So, what does the EC itself has to say about these concerns? I'm delighted to say that I've been joined in the studio by Principal Public Relations Officer of the EC, Sylvia Ano. Thank you very much for your time, Madam.
You're welcome.
Right, and before we go to Madam Ano, I first want to hear directly from some of the political parties. Joining me on the phone now is the Director of Communications of the CPP, Nneɛma Akomfra. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Nneɛma Akomfra.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to your listeners, and good afternoon to fellow Ghanaians.
First, tell me, did you have your agents on the ground monitoring this exercise over the weekend?
Yes, I mean, basically our constituency branches and the polling station branches constitute our agents. And when you take Ododo, for example, the feedback we had was that the attendance was very much indeed. So that's the main concern that we had, not really about any fault with the machinery or anything like that. We need to commend the Electoral Commission certainly for the ongoing process of seeking to familiarize themselves and also to educate the general public about the process. So it's a commendable exercise, but the concern may be that there hasn't been as much education or publicity as need be, generating very little response from the public. And so on the one hand, they may have succeeded in learning the lessons that they need to learn as a commission. But on the other hand, the education of the general public, very a limited number of people have been educated about the process. And so I think we will envisage that there will be a more intensive TV campaign getting towards 7th December to educate the public more about the process. Again, voting is the same as before. The only difference is that there's a verification process which involves machines.
Now, the concern by some of your colleagues from the other political parties is that there was very little time for the EC to educate the public on this particular exercise, and that could affect the eventual exercise on December 7. They're saying because of the limited education on the exercise, very few people turned up for it, and as such, it cannot test the equipment to stand to the test of time. So is that a concern that you share?
Indeed, it is a concern. I mean, we were aware of it very late, and we didn't have much time to even get our own people involved, engaged in it, to say, go and test the system. And I think I'm not aware that of any major publicity of the process. So, certainly, I don't think many people who are not engaged in politics would have been aware that such an exercise was going on. The first we heard was when the media started mentioning it in the news. So I think I then had to check with our own secretariat to be informed that yes, there's an exercise going on. But I think many members of the public would not have been aware of the exercise. So again, inadequate preparation, inadequate publicity, and this is something that we need to become more aware of. We need in the next few weeks to December 7th embark on a massive television advertising to ensure that we are educating the public more about the process, how it works, what you need to do when you get to the polling station. And I think the Electoral Commission to take that very, very seriously indeed.
All right. Thank you very much. And that's the CPP's Director of Communications, Ni Amar Konfa. Let's go on the lines again and speak to the MPP's Director of Research and Elections, Martin Ajay Mensah-Korsah. Thank you very much for your time, sir. And now you raised some concerns yesterday about the conduct of the exercise. What exactly are those?
Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon to your listeners. I think that in measuring the real essence of this exercise, we could have done better. And doing better for me was to assess really the ability of these equipment to withstand pressure as compared to the bad experiences we had sometime in the past with registration. Unfortunately, the Commission did not do enough publicity. Publicity was very, very poor, and therefore the patronage was very poor. As we stand now, we are unable to tell how these equipment are really going to cope with pressures that we anticipate will be brought to bear on them on election day. And for me, that really took away a lot from the essence of the exercise. Again, it's absolutely unacceptable that as we stand today, nearly a month to election, political parties do not have copies of the register. I witnessed a few centers where voters went and could not find their names in the register. The CI-72, which is supposed to be the regulations on the process of registration, mandates the Commission to have given political parties 3 clear months after registration copies of this register. As we speak, we are in the statement, and that has not been done. We are unable to help people identify their names in the register before the election. And can you imagine a situation where people walk to the centers on election day holding their cards and they cannot find their names in the register? I think it's quite worrying. Again, the Commission ought to have hosted the register on their website now for the Ghanaian populace to check. That again has not been done, and that is in breach of the law. Some few centers that I checked yesterday and on Saturday, you realize that some people who came and could not be verified because they did not have clean hands. And I think that the Commission must take it upon itself either to engage in vigorous publicity or education of the people, or we may have to provide facilities for cleaning people's hands at the point of voting.
Now, Mr. J. Mensah-Korsah, we're about 31 days to the elections. Do you have the confidence that the Electoral Commission can adequately address these challenges that you've identified with the very little time we have left for the elections?
Well, I think those are the assurances that we need from the Commission, and they ought to be doing that now. I mean, the stakes in this election are so high, and we cannot get it wrong. And therefore, all hands must be put together. People at the Commission would have to begin collaborating with stakeholders to make sure that we get it right. I mean, can you imagine a situation, if I could further identify, that people who got registered during the registration exercise but were given cards which had wrong polling station codes on them, As I speak to you, the Commission is engaged in an exercise of reprinting voter ID cards to replace those wrong ones given to prospective voters. I ask myself how these cards are going to be given out so that it does not affect or create problems on election day. All of these, I think, are very serious matters that the Commission ought to be addressing and inspire confidence. Let us assure that all is well and that they can deliver a credible poll for us in December to choose the leader that Ghana needs.
All right, many thanks for your time. That was Martin Ajay Mensah-Korsah. He's the Director of Research and Elections of the opposition New Patriotic Party. Now, let's go to the studio now. Madam Sylvia Ano joins me. Madam Ano, you heard the concerns raised by the political parties. One of them is the limited publicity given to the exercise. How do you react to that?
Thank you very much. And first and foremost, let me say that there is a difference between the biometric voter registration kit and the verification machine. Secondly, you have an exercise that is meant to test the waters, and it was zoomed specifically into certain areas, one rural setting, one urban setting. Therefore, publicity, although was done on the whole, it narrowed down to those in those particular or respective areas. Now, we need to find out ourselves and probably refrain from generalizing that, and probably we need to delve deep and ask ourselves, why didn't some people or registered voters go to the centers while they were doing the mock?
Were they given the adequate
of course. There
education?
Was no, publicity.
Publicity
in that direction.
Yes.
You know, let me say that there was no contest anywhere in terms of elections, maybe between candidate A and candidate B.
But the argument they're making is that because very few people turned up at the centers to vote, you cannot really test the efficiency of these machines.
The few people is my problem. The generalization is my problem. Now, it just ended. We are yet to even get the figures, you know. And at certain places, we were told that there was a high turnout. So you cannot say low turnout and generalize, you know. And particularly, even voting itself is not compulsory. You know, it's optional. You need to, because we are a growing democracy, we need to educate ourselves about the importance of
would you say that the concerns raised by these political parties, they are a major stakeholder in the electoral process anyway, would you say their concerns are legitimate?
Let me say that's the reason I'm explaining the issues to them, because the kind of reaction tends to probably create an impression that the machines cannot withstand pressure. Now, that's the reason I started by saying that the biometric voters machine and the verification machine are two separate machines. Now, one uses batteries. There's the normal batteries. I'm talking about the verification machines. Right. And throughout, we never heard of anything that could create problems for us come December 7th. All those who went there, you know, very few people had the kind of problem with the maybe putting their finger on the machine, and by virtue of the fact that the fine lines on their fingers have diminished.
Okay, but there's a possibility that the machine can break down on voting day. How will the EC deal with that situation?
The Electoral Commission is proactive. Let me say that the essence of the pilots is to identify problems.
Okay, so what about the EC? What observations did the Commission itself make about the exercise?
Let me make an initial observation. The only thing, the only problem, you know, initial, that I can talk about is the issue of some people probably having their fingers maybe not too clean, and for that matter, couldn't be picked by the machine. And during the registration, we provided wipes, and I don't think that come December 7th, we wouldn't do that. We would definitely provide wipes for those who come and are unable to have their fingers picked by the machine.
Right. We also had reports that some voters, eligible voters who participated in the mock exercise, could not find their names on the register.
That's a good one. Now, during exhibition, we said that if you don't check your name, it will be difficult for you to blame the Electoral Commission come December 7th. Because if you assume that your name is there, you have the card, and therefore you wouldn't go and check your name. That is an erroneous impression. Now, the card you see is related to some kind of data. That is the voters register. So that if you have your card with you and you don't check your name, you don't check your bio data, it's a problem. It's a problem. With respect to those whose codes have been were swabbed, and you know, we have district offices all over the country.
Okay,
so
for those people who are unable
problems,
to, exactly, for those who are unable to actually detect their names on the register, what would they be required to do? Now,
exhibition is passing on. So that if you have an ID card and you didn't check, you know, we're saying it's over, we were reiterating, emphasizing the need to check your name, although you have your card. You know, if you didn't check your name, come December, and you go to the center and you don't find your name in the voters register, I'm sorry, that is unfortunate.
All right. Okay. So, what happened to the ballot papers that were used yesterday? That was a major concern that some parties had. What was done to the ballot papers? Were they destroyed?
Let me say that it is not even proper to worry about ballot papers that were used for a mock exercise.
But it's important to understand where they are now.
Definitely they will be destroyed. But let me also say that come December 7th, party agents are going to be present at each center. And before voting commences, before we start voting, the ballot, the transparent ballot box that we all see would be shown in the open to the general public present. And the party agents are supposed to be there. There will be seals. You know, we need to understand some of these things. Right. There will be specified seals with special figures on it to be taken by the party agents. At the end of the day, when we are voting is done with and counting is about to begin, the agents assemble, and then the seal on the ballot box, you know, would be, they would have to check and verify whether it corresponds with what they have before the seals are broken. And then in the open, ballots are counted. So there's no way ballots that were used that are not validated can even enter the ballot box and be counted if you are diligent.
Now, you have 31 days to the elections. Do you think that provides you with enough time to address all these challenges?
Of course, 31 days to elections. And let's also remember that making elections successful is a collective responsibility. It does not only lie, the responsibility is not only that of the Electoral Commission. It is you and I, the electorate, and everybody. We all have specific roles to play to make sure that the election is successful. We are doing our bit, so we expect the electorate, particularly our stakeholders, to play their roles effectively to make the election successful. Okay,
and finally, before you go, we're told that the EC is meeting the political parties tomorrow to dialogue on a few issues. What can you tell us about that?
The Electoral Commission, in collaboration with DFID, and then facilitated by CAB Governance Consult, is, you know, meeting the candidates, you know, for the presidential election, so that after the meeting, whatever, or the dialogue, whatever happens, will be communicated for the media to dissect.
Thank you very much. And that's Madam Sylvia Ano. She's the Principal Public Relations Officer of the Electoral Commission, joining me in the studios here for Election Headquarters. But that's how we wrap up the program. Election Headquarters was brought to you live from Joy News. It was Joy News Studios here on the Multi-TV channel, Joy News channel on the Multi-TV. Also, it was online at myjoyonline.com, also on radio on Joy 99.7 FM, and also was streaming live on Love 99.5 FM in Kumasi. The program is brought to you by Star Ghana as well as Infobox Mobile Services. Text election to 1922. My name is Arabakumson.